Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Strategy Mob. Today, I have two very special guests who both happen to be named Todd. So this is going to be fun. I have Todd Lalonde, who is the Director of Operations for the Drive Automotive Group. Todd, thanks for taking the time to jam with me today.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the invite.
And I have Todd Bourgon, who is the Executive Director of the TADA. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you did great. Thanks.
Awesome. Hey guys, for everyone out there who's watching and listening right now and kind of don't know, how you guys got started in the industry and what your background is, if we can kind of start off with what is the origin story of Todd and Todd, that would be a great place for us to kind of kick it off. Todd Lalonde, I'll get you to kick us off.
Bit of a, I guess you could call it unique background. As I sort of go around and tell my proverbial story, I never had a job till I was 33, a real job till I was 33. Was involved in professional sport from the time I was obviously a kid until 33. And when I got finished in the sports business, obviously decided to go back to university and had the idea of doing something. When I finished university, in between completing or finishing university and getting into the job that I thought I was going to have, I stumbled into a gentleman who was in the car business, and like everybody else, thought I had 2 or 3 months before the real job would be starting, and I got involved in the car business. And that was I think it was 2006. So from there, I started in the car business in Windsor, Ontario, working for a guy named Terry Raffi at a Toyota store. And then from there, it just sort of began to all come together. I loved the car business. When I finished playing and coaching hockey, I really felt a void of the competitiveness, the win or the loss, the lack of the sort of relevant narrative as to why in the sports business, either win or you lose. And the reasons don't really matter. You just get back at it the next night and try to do your best. And this car business thing was tremendous and sort of really gravitated to it, not just from an operational being in the business, but really wanting to learn the business and what made the best dealers the best and what made the best organizations the best. And from there, it just sort of came together. About 6 years ago, I moved to the city and bumped into a guy named Jim Sullivan. And here we are. And it's been outstanding for me. So I'm a real fortunate
Here we
guy.
are. That's how it started, right? Now,
Yeah.
Todd, you do some pretty cool videos. Coming from a guy who does a lot of videos himself, I actually found one from a Kia dealership, I believe in 2014. That was a fun, entertaining video to watch, man. So how did you get started, capturing video content for yourself?
You know what? I'm absolutely not a tech guy, but I've been, I spent about 12 years as a coach, and I did it for a living, where I always tell everybody that I get an opportunity to speak to that it's incredible when your mortgage payment depends upon wins and losses. And I coached major junior hockey in Sudbury for 10 years. And coaching was just such a big part of what I did every day. And it was really evident to me very quickly in our industry that there was no consistent strategy to what we do. It was complete randomization. It was that whole mercenary approach that if I was blessed to have a skilled individual, I did well. If I had a good brand and a good location, I did better. But I didn't have a lot of control over what I did, and nothing was repeatable. So when I had the opportunity at that little Kia deal, it was the single greatest automotive experience of my life, because we took a little Kia store that basically was bankrupt. We bought the store and really just turned it into an efficient business model. And what I mean by that is we managed by the metrics, we employed people, we trained people. We really sort of focused in on what are the behaviors that are going to give us results that we need? How do we measure them? And then how do we repeat it? Or how do we identify when we're not doing well so we don't repeat it? And that's how the video thing started. It was really just a way for me to get to the staff so that they could watch it in real time. And rather than have Grant Cardone or Joe Verdi or all these people that might not be relatable, we just started to do our own video training. And the more they watched it, my comparison was I spent hours in a little, 12 by 12 office in a hockey rink somewhere in Sudbury and watched video for hours to try to pick apart my opponent, but more importantly, try to look at my team and see what they were doing well so I could repeat it. And equally as important, identify what they're not doing well and eliminate it. And selfishly, it was survival. So that's how it sort of started. And then obviously it's a Drive Autogroup. We've invested tons of money into our mentorship program to be able to not just help the people inside our organization, but identify this industry for people that I don't think know really what it's about. And that's how that all came about.
That's very cool. All right, Todd Bourgon, how does one become the executive director of the TADA? I want to know the origin story.
I don't even know if I can top Todd's story at that point. I think I might be out. That's a great entry into our industry. I love it. There's so many stories of people that kind of enter into our industry kind of midstream, so to speak, and then when they get into it, it's like they just can't stay away from it. So glad to hear it. My entry into the industry was not by design, quite frankly. I managed a Fortune 500 company in Canada, ran their operations for a number of years, but had a very young family at the time, and was traveling about 3 to 3.5 weeks of every month. And decided it was time for a change where I could find myself a bit more grounded in the Ontario market, and always had automotive in my blood. The other organization that I ran was an automotive organization, and this opportunity presented itself. And it started with the Toronto Dealers Association back for me in 2008, so coming up, well, just over 12 years now. And then I was part of the merger with the Ontario Association. So it's been a very interesting and educational ride, so to speak. And I think the last 5 weeks have probably added up to almost the last 5 years in terms of learning through a fire hose. But that's all part of it.
Look, it's an interesting time for us as an industry. So much of this reminds me of the recession, and then so much of it is so unique in itself. I was in the States in the automotive industry during the recession, and there was kind of a built up, like a progression, of just kind of things kind of going sideways, or people not coming in. It was a slow progression. This was a switch. So let's start with that, because I think that's what everybody wants to talk about, is kind of the now. And then of course I want to take majority of the time and really kind of talk about how you guys see things progressing over time and what that new norm is going to look like. But I think it's fair for us to just kind of talk about the now at this given moment. So Todd B, for yourself, for being the executive director for the TADA, what is kind of the mood that you're seeing in the industry right now?
I think honestly, it changes every 10 minutes. It goes from, moments of frustration to moments of, okay, we think we've got a better understanding of this, to back to, moments of how long is this bloody thing going to go on for? And so it's been juggling those, I call it those emotional balls, so to speak. And certainly, and I get it. I mean, there's a lot on the line. Everyone that is in our province, the members of our association, are all independent business owners. And so, the biggest challenge has been getting clarity to the information that comes out, because it's happening so rapidly. And you alluded to it earlier. It's like in 2008, it was a long runway to the downturn in the economy. In 2020, it was within 2 or 3 days, everything turned itself upside down. And I think that's been the biggest frustration for everybody, is trying to adapt as quickly as they've had to adapt. But overall, the one thing about this industry, and I always like to relate things, Todd, back to sports as well, is that we're resilient as hell, and strong teams always come back after they've been beaten. And we're not beaten by any stretch. I would say that the industry right now is a little confused in some regards, in terms of like how long this thing goes on for, and what it really means with showrooms being closed and trying to figure out new ways of selling. But in the long run, we'll all be stronger as we get through this. That I do know.
I completely agree with you on that. I think and the same thing happened during the recession. We came out such strong. I mean, there was just so much built up demand. I think what people have to remember, is that, people who have been shopping for cars haven't stopped shopping for cars, right? Are they going to buy one right now? Maybe, maybe not. Probably a large percentage of them won't. But, I just remember coming off of that 2008 and getting into early 2009, and it was just like someone flipped a light switch on. And there's all that built up demand kind of came into play, which made us had to kind of readjust our operations because we just weren't ready for that. So I think, going into kind of that new norm, and, Todd L, I'm setting you up for this next question, is like there's our current operations, and then what potentially our new operations is going to look like when we come back to some level of normalcy. And I'm not going to pretend like I know when that is. I love that there's people out there like June 17th, we're going to be back. Like, what the hell did you come up with that date for? But at some point in time, we're going to get back to it. So, Todd L, this one's for you. Operations right now, what does this look like for you?
Well, my first comment, I have to agree with Todd. I think this industry is absolutely resilient. And I think the one thing that anytime we sort of deal with any sense of adversity, the one thing that has proven consistently is we really get a clear and evident picture of who our people are. From our leaders in our stores to see how they respond. And, as a coach, I always used to say, the true sign of an individual is during those times of adversity, how do we react? And I used to always say, listen, I don't need you when I've won 7 in a row. I need you when I've lost 7 in a row. I need a win. And I'll tell you, that's one thing that's proven really clear with us. We've got all of our franchises up and running with the exception of one. I've got 11 general managers that are engaged and I think are prepared to battle. And right now, I mean, it's a tough go. We've have a plan in place. Obviously, a lot of our business circumvents around our service business. Fortunately for us, we're still operating at about 70% of what we forecasted for the month of April. So we're really happy with that on the service side of our business. On the sales side of our business, even with the recent events here in the province of Ontario, we're still managing to sell as a group about 30 cars a week, all digitally. So from a positive perspective, we are preparing for what the new normal will be. And again, I've never really envisioned the automotive purchase just jumping into a traditional Amazon type online, because I think there are some legitimate industry concerns about, am I getting the right information? Is the information accurate? And that proves consistent just by the percentage of customers that even just give us phone numbers digitally. But I think what it does is it allows us to carry that communication and interact with that customer properly so that we give them a sense of confidence and certainty that the information we're giving them is right. The vehicle that they're looking at is the right vehicle, and we're prepared to take as much or as little time as you need. So I think holistically, proverbially, it's been said a million times, but these times allow us to reset our business. They allow us to identify who are our key players and what sort of leadership capabilities do they have. And then finally, it's really going to allow us to look and cleanse and see, hey, listen, what did our business look like? What were our net returns based on sort of the line one revenue we were generating? And I think the one thing has been evidently clear at the Drive Autogroup, we have seen we can do a whole bunch with not very many. And that's an exciting thing for us. And we really can't wait till things get back to normal. But in the meantime, it's executing the strategy that we have in place that evolves around our service business and catering to those that are required to use our facilities. Certainly look at our digital platform and come up with a really customer-centric model that allows us to repeat how customers want to be dealt with. And then finally, when we open up for regular business, we'll see where we are.
I love how everyone right now is like the new way to buy a car. Like, this didn't exist before. It's like I was talking to a buddy of mine who runs a fairly large BDC for a large automotive group. And, we were both joking about this because, 15 years ago, we were drop shipping cars. If someone wanted to buy a Corvette on the other side of the country, we'd sell them a Corvette and we'd send it to them on the other side of the country. And it was like, I don't know why all of a sudden we're calling this like the new way to buy a car. I think what it is from an operations perspective, we have to make a choice, of how we're going to present the process. And I think it's more of a process than it is a technology.
Certainly operationally, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've been buying cars online as an organization for the last 15 years at the different various auctions and trade wholesale applications that are available for us. And one of the interesting comments I had from one of our customers who we educated on how to virtually present the vehicle that they wanted to trade was that exact comment. Hey, listen, this isn't new. As an organization, we've been buying cars from from people unseen. We don't go stand at auction lanes very rarely anymore. But there's a professional way to be a seller and there's a professional way to be a buyer, and it's rooted in transparency. So let me show you how to professionally sell your car. And it's been a kind of a cool thing to watch the customer's eyes light up when they think, yeah, this really isn't all that new. So most of them have some sort of smartphone, and most of them know how to take a picture. So we're halfway home.
I'm finding right now, talking to a lot of dealers, that customers are actually really like hyper like connected. Like when they're in the dealership, they're easily distracted. It's like, you've done the deal, or you're negotiating a deal. Someone excuses himself, goes to a manager's desk, and someone's like on their phone, and now that's not necessarily the case. It's like, it's like, because we're having to communicate face to face, like we are right now on video chat, it's like there's a huge level of hyper attention between, the dealer and the customer. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. Now, with that said though, Todd B, this is a question more for you, because I think you're so close to all of the new information that's coming out as far as what the government's saying, or what the province is saying, or what OMVIC is saying. And I think there is some confusion out there. Is this something you feel comfortable kind of talking about, kind of laying it out there, kind of, this is the way we have to do it? Is that something you feel okay kind of commenting on?
Yeah, sure.
So right now, what is that process? What can we officially do?
Well, what we can officially do, quite honestly, is operate within the guidelines that we're given. And I mean, it sounds cliche, but you mentioned a couple of parties there. There's the government, there's OMVIC, and then there's the retailers, and then there's us that helps lobby and interpret that information both ways. And there is certainly some frustration that some people would like to see certain rules lightened up from the OMVIC side. But part of it too is the challenge for us is helping to, and I hate to use the word educate, but I guess inform back that OMVIC doesn't create their own playbook. They're not given the rules. They don't create their own rules. The government provides those rules through the MVDA, which is Motor Vehicle Dealer Act. And so, when we're looking for things to be adjusted or changed in these times of complete uncertainty, we've quite frankly had a lot of wins given to us from the government to help keep the province moving, liquidity moving, keep employees with some sort of income in a really terrible time. And so right now, we're focused on the recovery piece, and that's really what we got to look at. We have to deal with what we have to deal with, but some of the changes that people may say, hey, there's confusion there, and why can't they do this or why can't they do that? Well, in a lot of these cases, it requires a legislative change, which means you've got to introduce this legislation. It's got to go through the entire process. And quite frankly, I think if we're all being honest with each other, certainly we all want to sell cars and we all have a living that we need to make. But I don't think that any government's going to prioritize putting in new legislation so that they can make a small adjustment to, how a car delivery takes place or how a test drive works. And so that, I am empathetic, sympathetic, and it's been a painful sort of month and a half of trying to help the dealers, certainly on many fronts. But I think that's the one right now that I would say that there is definitely maybe not so much confusion, but maybe just a misunderstanding of how the process works to get those type of things put into play. But overall, I think that when you look at, if you say the clock started on March the 7th, and I'm not saying that's the exact date, but let's say it started on March the 7th. Where are we now? We're April the 15th. Sorry, every day's Monday. I think that I've never seen governments, I've never seen industry and pivot so quickly. I've never seen 1,100 dealers refocus their businesses so quickly. So there is always some good in everything, and the good that's come out of it. Said at least that we've had the year of the right people, that have been on this. So anyone that's listening to you that's in our province that still has some uncertainty or some unclarity, we've been available literally 24/7 since this started, and they're more than welcome to reach out to us when the time arises.
That's very cool. I guess my next question for kind of both you guys is getting into that new norm, whenever that is, right? I think from an industry, we're going to see some changes, and I think operationally, I think we're going to see a fair amount of changes. But I'd really kind of like to hear both you guys' thoughts and opinions on this. Let's start on the operations side with yourself, Todd L. Operationally, coming out of this time frame, how do you see we're going to get back at this? You said it kind of earlier where we're going to do a lot with a lot less. Operationally, how do you perceive that going down?
Well, again, I think a lot is going to change. I think a lot of decisions will be made based on what we're experiencing now. And I do have to say something to Todd, certainly as a guy who represents a whole bunch of individual businesses and one big dealer group. One statement he made that I couldn't agree with more is you have absolutely had a bunch of wins for us. So I really want to, in a position that's very difficult, I want to personally say thank you for that.
Yes.
I think your lobbying and your ability to navigate and give us the presence we have today. I've always said it's easy to poke holes in things, but to sit back and think what we have today versus without good leadership, what we might not have today and what that may have created for us coming out of this. I mean, I don't even want to think that. So thank you, Todd, to you and your staff. You've done a masterful job.
It was very kind. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, coming out of this, I think our business changes. I mean, I've got my own sort of ideas that I thought long before this happened. I think we are going to have to do way more with less. I think, as a guy who has a massive state-of-the-art business development center of, 40 people that answers every inbound internet lead, every inbound service. I mean, we field 50,000 inbound calls a month here through our business development center. I think that's a relook. I think we've got to really look at what our customers want and listen and facilitate exactly what their interests are. I think hygiene has a new definition. I think anxiety has a new definition. And I think if our industry really does care, if we really want less emphasis on the economy and the manufacturer and internally to be able to create a little bit of our own economy, I think we really have to look intrinsically at our organization and say, hey, listen, what do our customers want? And stop doing business the way we want to do it. That's sort of been my epiphany, right? I mean, we did an exercise at our group in January of last year where in service, we listened third party to everything customers said yes to, and we listened to everything customers said no to. And it was interesting. We were happy when we heard the word no from a customer. The opposite was success for us. So we were happy with that no because we didn't have to exercise something. And I think intrinsically, we really have to listen to what customers say yes to and do our best to be able to cater to that. It was interesting to hear Todd's background being in big business, Fortune 500. That's where I thought I was going before I ended up in the car industry. And in those moments of solace when I'm driving home, the motivating factor is a big business has to create their own economy, even during times of adversity. We can't rely on a manufacturer's interest rate or a new model coming out to be able to justify performance in our industry. We have massive databases. We have loyal customers coming through service. And we need to get the dismal numbers that we deal with, 35, 40, 50% retention of customers who own cars after 1 year and stop that justification as to why and get every single one of our customers that buy cars from us to not even consider going anywhere to have their car serviced but an OEM. I mean, that's where we have to drive our business, and it takes a bunch of training and it takes the right people, not just the right people training, but the right people in our environments that want to do things the right way. And I think that'll be the biggest takeaway from this. We won't have time because as much as these times are stressful, document this. The first 6 months out of this will be equally as stressful as we try to get back. Because if we think, Todd calls us one day and says, all right, boys, it's time to go back to business and everything's going to be the same way it was, we're delusional.
Mm-hmm.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, we're not going back to the way we kind of were before, and I think the key to getting that started or prepping for what that new norm is going to be is, as at a dealership level, we need to feel comfortable letting the customer steer the direction. Where in the past, we're the ones that have always held on to that steering wheel as much as possible. We want to control that process. Now with that said, we've talked so much. I mean, Todd, I've been to so many TADA conferences where, customer experience and customers' expectation is always a major theme of those conferences. But we always talk about how the customer's expectation is simply to meet the expectation. It's not. We actually have to exceed the expectation. Now, as an industry, what is your thoughts on how that will change moving into this new norm?
Well, I mean, I think it's very much what Todd has actually referred to, is that the industry is going to adapt to how a customer wants to shop and buy from us. And quite frankly, to do that, it's required a number of players in the industry to adapt and change as well, right? And, the most obvious one in Ontario would be the banking infrastructure, and the requirements around signatures that have been kind of a quote unquote handicap to adjusting to a system like we have now. But in the last 7 days, we worked very closely with our national association and the lobbying for these organizations to be to help us and to consider pivoting and changing has paid off. I think there's three now as in the last 24 hours that have changed their policies and how that happens. So. I just think it's very obvious that it doesn't matter if it's the car industry. It doesn't matter if you're going to Shoppers Drug Mart. It doesn't matter if you're going to Sobeys. The reality is that all those shopping experiences will change for quite some time. And it's important that I think that we're eyes wide open to it. Number one, that our heads are out of the sand, that it'll eventually just go back to the way that it was, because I don't think that it will. But the good news is, we know that this is going to happen when things open back up. So one of the things that have been working on the last couple of days is helping prepare documentation for the dealers to be able to have protocols in place for both them, their customers, and their staff and things like that. So we're already starting to prepare for what does it look like when we go back to work. And to Todd's point is that, there is going to be a demand for services. There is going to be, in our opinion, pent-up demand for vehicles once we get through this. And will there be some anxiety in some cases for people not wanting to go into public places to get them and pick them up? Likely. And if that's the case, then the good news is we have an opportunity now to find a way to answer that demand. The one thing that I think is going to be a very interesting experiment out of all this is that, for the last number of years, everywhere that I've gone for conferences and people that I've talked to, it's been all about how certain generations, and I've got two of them in my house that play in that generation, they're not going to drive anymore. They're going to share cars. 5 people are going to own that car, and all these types of different models that were being explored. Well, I'm hearing that a lot of people are going to reconsider that type of a model, only because now, even from a public transit perspective, you might not see the same type of trust, or you might see a higher level of anxiety in those modes of transportation. So you may see automotive, and you hate to benefit from anything as horrible as what we've all experienced and what the world's experienced, but you may see a benefit and an uptake from that. So, there is some silver lining, but I think now everyone's got a bit of extra quote unquote time on their hands if they're at home working versus in the physical environment. So now's the time to get those plans in place and not wait for them to say, okay, showrooms are now open, because they're not just going to do that. The government is not going to say, okay, everything's back to normal. It's not. They'll put certain restrictions in place to protect all of us, and we'll have to continue to adapt. So I think I think you're right, Todd. We have a lot of adaptation coming in the next 6 months, and I actually think that's probably the right length of runway.
You mentioned time, which as an industry, I mean, I sit down and talk with a lot of dealer principals and a lot of directors of operations. I mean, Todd, I was sitting in your office. Isn't that crazy? Not only like maybe a few weeks ago, so much has changed since then, right? And time is just something we've always in the past talked about, like we don't have. Like it's such a high commodity. There was just so little of it. Now I'm finding when I'm talking with dealer principals and I'm talking to directors of groups that they have this time. So I'm just this is my question, I guess, for you guys is, where do you think the best usage of this kind of newfound time is, knowing, what the next 6 months is going to come, at least having an idea. Todd L., I'm going to start with you. Like, what are you guys doing as a group right now with all this newfound time?
Well, I mean, if there's new time, I want to find it. I just said to my boss just this morning, man, I've never worked so hard to try to accomplish so much. I think a lot of our time right now, certainly from my perspective, my job is I'm the vision guy. I'm what is it going to look like, and how do we make sure we get to where we need to go, all the while working within sort of the confines or the boundaries that insulate us from any significant failure. And again, like I said, we've remained operational. 10 of our 11 franchises continue to operate as they did within the confines of what the government has told us to operate. And quite frankly, I think we're better today than we were 3 weeks ago. I think our group is tighter. We meet every day as an organization at 10 o'clock via this methodology right here, all 10 general managers and some of their support staff. And it's incredibly structured, but it's an opportunity to give some direction and some vision to where we're going today. What do we need to accomplish? And what are we doing today? And is that an investment into what's going to protect us and help us as an organization moving forward? And I just can't stop getting away from that one exercise we did where we looked at, what do we say yes to as an organization? And we studied it in the service department. And we found that we say yes to anything that matters to us and not yes to what matters to the consumer. And I think that's a fundamental flaw. And I think it speaks to why we have the numbers we have when it comes to retaining our customers. I think we say yes to a lot of things as well. And I think that when it comes to our employees, and I think that speaks to the turnover of our employees. I mean, this is a great industry. I mean, this is a competitive, not for the faint of heart business. If we can create an environment whereby we have strategies that are repeatable and trainable, I think we'll attract people that, are that sort of characteristic, those people that are battlers and competitors. But, I see organizations and environments that turn over 70, 80% of their people. How do you possibly succeed when 7 of every 10 people that are working for you today aren't going to be working for you in the next 8 months? How do you build any momentum? And I think, one of the things that is certainly a big thing for us, and we talk about it every day with our HR department, is who is the next generation? Who are the people that we want working for us? How do we get to those people? And then how do we create an environment where the last thing they would ever want to do is even think of leaving? And I think if we can do that in this organization, listen to what the customer wants, and have the vigilance to withstand what we're going through today. Again, as Todd opened with, we're a resilient bunch, and I think we'll be great when it's all over. And I think the opportunities will be very, very, very fruitful coming out of this.
Very well said, Todd. Hey, guys, I have another question for you. It has to do with communication, because like right now I see in the industry is just kind of a whole inconsistency in communication, right? I mean, I find that there are dealerships and certain dealer bodies out there that are doing a phenomenal job of staying communicated with their staff and staying communicated with, their customers. And then I'm seeing a whole whack ton of them out there literally just sticking their heads in the sand and just la 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 until this whole thing is over. And I'm not 100% sure what's the right or wrong way to do it. I've just noticed two different extremes when it comes to communications, and I'm curious on kind of what your guys' thoughts are. Todd B, I'll start this off with you. As far as communication efforts go, what are your thoughts and opinions on how and what we should be communicating right now?
Well, I think, everyone's an independent business owner. So for me to tell them how, when you look at the demographic of our province and the rural versus the urban capacities and sprawl, then I would not be the right person to give blanket advice. But I think that, one of the things that when we were with the Premier this past weekend, the things that we certainly hit upon is that car dealerships touch every aspect of every community in the province of Ontario. And they play a role in these communities. And, Todd, I didn't know that you were a coach in Sudbury, so I'll use Sudbury as an example where, some of the towns that aren't as close to the cities certainly rely upon, their community makeup much differently. So I think that from a communication perspective, I think it's just important that the dealers are in touch with their local communities and are playing a role in part of the solution as well. And those are some of the good stories. I mean, Jason, we've heard so many stories from so many dealers that have stepped up just silently. And you hear about them through the grapevine where, one donated his whole vehicle loaner fleet to doctors and nurses in his area because he didn't want them to have to worry about contaminating their family car going back and forth to the hospital. So, things like that, I think, are the communications that are non-traditional, but say a lot and speak big volumes. And then there's the communication, not to the general public, there's communications to your teams. And, I'm a big believer that nobody is too big or too small to do any job in any organization, whether it's from, the one that gets to put their name on the front door to the one that has to clean the washrooms. And in these times, what we've tried to do is communicate with our teams and just bring a level of humanity to it. So we do, even internally, we do a social call on Zoom every week just to check in with people. And, and it's just an opportunity to kind of re-engage. And I got to believe that, that those types of engagements that you never really got to spend any time with people on those levels on a regular basis, it's going to create much stronger teams as we come out of this. And, I think it goes without saying too, is that some may choose that they don't want to be on the team in some cases because they don't like the new norm that it's going to become, and maybe that they're not in the right environment, and that's okay too.
Todd L., any thoughts as far as how to communicate or what to communicate, both to staff and customers?
Again, I think, communication is sort of a vital piece in any environment. I think I think lack of communication is what creates a lot of sort of anxiety as to what's happening. We're an organization 900 strong. We're down to a fraction of that today. But I think not only just communicating with the people that are currently battling with us, but continuing to communicate with those that are not with us today and sort of on furlough, and not from an operational perspective. I think the one thing that's been pretty cool, as Todd alluded to, was sort of just the humanity that comes out of this sort of stuff. And I use the term stuff because it's lack of a better phrase. I mean, again, Jay, 5 weeks ago, you're sitting in my office and we're talking about, the business, and boy, we don't know what happens the next day, right? We don't know what happens, what's in store for us the next month, and not to get philosophical by any means, but I think there's some reality there. So really, to answer your question, I think communication is vital. And I think I'm not qualified to answer how to do it, but I think we've got to communicate to our employees that are with us today. And I think, as a leader, I think that's the big piece. And again, not just selective communication, but communicate to everybody and communicate the right things. And certainly our customer base, we've spent a ton of time dividing up our customer base. We believe the industry is going to go to a brand ambassador model where that person handles the service business, it handles the sale, it handles the equity piece. That person is your automotive go-to. And we just think we're going to communicate that to our customers on a regular basis. Our standard language is, we're here for you. I know we don't always demonstrate it by what we do, but I'll tell you, our intentions are always the best. And we're working to certainly exceed your expectations, even when sometimes it doesn't seem that way. We are. And then internally, we're trying to do the best we can. So I think just constantly communicate, let them know we're here for them. And you know what, it's just, how are you doing and how you feeling? And, everybody deals with this sort of stuff differently. I'm blessed with a different sort of makeup. I have a son who's just recently graduated from university and twins who are 8. So I've got different areas of the sort of the fatherhood realm, and just to see how they deal with these things differently, right? I've got a son who just graduated with his MBA and had everything lined up on his fancy dream Bay Street job, and now he's sort of forced to wait. And for kids, that time is anxious, right? And then I've got 8-year-olds, twins who should be playing lacrosse and hockey in their busiest time of crossover season, and they're at home. So I just think continuing to communicate, being honest and authentic, and being aware of people's feelings is the best thing we can do.
No, I'm with you. I think we, at any given time, and we always have to deploy empathy, but boy, we have to do it now more than ever. I'm finding right now that there seems to be kind of a disconnect as far as how we're addressing the anxiety. All right. So when I think about back to the recession, I remember clearly what the anxiety was. Am I going to have a job in 3 months? Am I going to have a job in 6 months? That anxiety is a lot different than the anxiety that we're dealing with today. And, I understand that the word sanitize is being used in a lot of our messages, but I have a concern about this, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. What the hell does that mean? Like, as an industry, or just, we've never defined what does it mean to actually sanitize a vehicle. What does it mean to have a touchless type transaction with someone? And I just have concerns that there's not like a defined process for this. I think there's opportunity for someone to define the process here, but I just feel like it's just it's all over the place. Todd B, I'll start with you on this, but what are your thoughts, man, about dealerships out there saying that they're sanitizing these vehicles?
Well, I think that, if you look at the definition by nature, obviously it's going to be subjective by each individual. But I really like to believe that, the information that the dealerships are getting either from their manufacturers or from us, and what they're getting from public health are giving them the ability to adapt and to do what they need to do in the vehicles. They're investing, quite frankly, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of cost to this by going and buying the equipment that they've had to buy to help protect consumers, whether it's steering wheel covers or the covers that for the shifter knobs and things like that. So honestly, this is one of those things, Jason, where I'll tell you that that's what we're literally working on as we speak at our association now, is helping gather that information and provide it to the dealers. Because as I mentioned earlier, right now we're in okay, what's recovery mode look like? We know what crisis mode feels like. It sucks. And we know how quickly when a government makes a change or makes an announcement, how quickly we have to get stuff out to the dealers, because literally within 5 minutes of that notification going out, or 5 minutes of the premier making the announcement, our phones are ringing because people are like, okay, what do I have to do next? So I think that right now, to be perfectly honest, there is no clear definition, but we are absolutely going to play a role in making sure that they have the tools to do that as we move forward.
That's awesome. I think that's cool as an organization that you guys are kind of, you're taking that extra step forward and, starting to at least have the conversation and discuss what that protocol should be. I'm curious, Todd L, for yourself, for your group, what does this type of process look like for you guys?
Well, again, it's massive, right? I think I made the comment earlier. I didn't use the term sanitize. Maybe I should have, but certainly from a hygienic perspective, I think it changes everything, right? One of the things we talk about every day is what are we doing to protect our employees, and what are we doing to protect the customers who are coming into our dealerships for service? It's going to be infrastructure. Again, I can confirm, because I'm the guy that does it, the increase in infrastructure costs and supply costs to be able to maintain this. And, as a group of 11 and, tens of thousands of repair orders a month, it adds to the cost. But, it's an investment. It's an investment in our staff and their families and our customers. And it's going to be the new norm, and it's going to be the way we do business. And again, anybody that thinks it isn't, I think they're kidding themselves. So I think it's just the reality of it. And I think whoever defines what that new sanitization standard is, I know I will say thank you, because I will steal that and implement it immediately and proceed with business. I think that's a really important thing that we standardize that.
I do. And I think someone needs to do it as quick as possible, because look, I'm all for it. Like I wish there was some standard process. Anyways, guys, I know we're getting towards the tail end of my time today with you, gentlemen. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me. This has been a lot of fun. But before we sign off, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. I get to ask each one of you, what is pissing you off? Okay. Todd Lalonde, I'm going to start with you. What is pissing you off?
Wow. What sort of pisses me off about our industry is the complete randomization and random chance of success. I think big business is big business. The amount of revenue we do as an industry in Canada, and to rely on absolute randomization in order to get that stresses me and frustrates me to no end. If we can eliminate randomization, add structure and intent to most everything we do, I think we have a great customer experience, a great employee experience, eliminate defection, and increase retention.
That sounds like an awesome bumper sticker, by the way. I might have to steal that.
I had no idea what to say, by the way. I wanted Todd to go first.
Okay.
Well,
you were going back and forth there really well. I thought I was going to follow his lead. Thanks for throwing a curve there.
They're a little curveball.
I'm just glad you didn't say it was us, Todd.
Yeah.
Because I think if that was the case, you look like you're a pretty fit guy. I was just going to close my computer and call it a day.
just close it. You're like, I'm done.
That's over. That's great.
All right, Todd B, you're up, man. All right. Right now, a lot of stuff going on. What is pissing you off?
I wouldn't say that there's a lot of things pissing me off, to be honest with you. I think that the most frustrating thing is you feel sometimes a little rudderless when you know that there's change that would be able to help people out that you can't make. But the one thing through all this that we've been, I guess, working under the mantra of, and that is, and in fact, I think the Premier did a much better job articulating than I ever could this weekend. And that was, we're going to have to do some things and we're going to have to change some things. And we're probably going to make a few mistakes along the way. And we're not immune to it either as an association. Nobody's immune to that. But it's a whole lot better than doing nothing. And so I think that for me, the frustration of, not being able to, bring that level of answer to everybody that everybody wants is frustrating. But I'm not pissed off. In fact, if anything, I'm pretty proud right now of how a lot of people in our province and even in our country have adapted and reacted to this. A lot of people have lost their jobs, even temporarily. Look at our industry. Our industry was on a huge upturn for the last, how many years? 12 straight years. And then boom, just like completely fell off a cliff overnight. So, there are things that people are dealing with that are much more, stressful and personal that you just wish that you could help out. But, as we move through all this, I can't wait to see what our industry looks like. And I can't wait to see the people that were there supporting us, whether they're vendors or whoever it is, and see the type of loyalty that they get back.
I'm with you, Todd. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
So sorry, I can't give you the rant you're looking for, but
That's
really
okay.
really not an angry person.
Okay, that's actually going to be the title right underneath your name. It's going to go right in there during this video. It's going to be Todd Bourgon, not the angry person. I'm just kidding. Hey guys, thanks again, man, for taking the time to jam with me today. This was so much fun. For everybody out there that's listening and watching right now and would love to connect with either one of you gentlemen, what is the best way to do so? Todd Lalonde, I will start with you.
Todd at driveautogroup.ca. I'm only on one social platform. I'm such a tech guy. LinkedIn is the only place that I know exists. So Todd at driveautogroup.ca or LinkedIn, and that's a great way to get a hold of me there.
Awesome. Thanks. Todd Bourgon, what is the best way to connect with you?
There's no good way to connect with me.
It just doesn't happen, right?
No. I'm all kidding aside. The best way to connect with me is through email. So toddb@tada.ca.
Awesome. Hey, thanks again, guys, for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
You too.